About Primeval Hierarchy in Our Society. By Anatoly Protopopov. The subject of primeval hierarchy in our society is extremely interesting itself and perhaps deserves a separate treatise. That's why I suggest in the end to step aside from gender relationships and to look at relationships of the people in general. Especially as this will allow us to better understand gender relationships as well. Primeval hierarchy explicitly or implicitly pierces our society. In relatively pure form we can observe it in many children groups, especially in children's homes when mind is not ripe yet. Gregarious hierarchy, uncritical subjectivity to authoritarian influence, these are instinctive behavioral programs undeterred by mind. By the way, the children from respectable families rarely find themselves in children's homes. Therefore, this specific behavior is significantly predetermined genetically. Provoking antisocial behavior of teenagers, and not only them, unmotivated cruelty, baiting of omegas, who are objectively not the worst children, are the demonstration of a hierarchical struggle. A low-ranked child occupies not the best place in a street hierarchy, hence there is no rational sense for him to take part in it. A low primitive child will do exactly this. He will distance himself from such hierarchy. A highly primitive child cannot do the same since his instinct powerfully requires taking part in hierarchy irrespective of how bad he feels in it. There was a perfect movie After Our Bykov Scarecrow where this primeval relations were shown with scientific accuracy. Unfortunately, the end of the film is not plausible. In reality, such repentance of hierarchical leaders is impossible. Among adults, hierarchy is well seen in conditions when civil rights are restricted one way or another. This is, for example, prisons, our army with all its violence and hazing, groups of people with a low culture, and especially, criminal gangs, where each new person is evaluated from the point of his rank, and where there is extreme intolerance to even the hint of disrespect. Inability to feel the own guilt is typical for high-ranking people, especially for egocentric. It is exactly inability and exactly to feel. In other words, their brains have no convolutions creating the sense of guilt. Under pressure of logical evidence he might agree with accusations, in case he cannot keep silent, but he will never sense any guilt. Striking example, J. Stalin. While making the mistakes he was sincerely sure that the enemies are guilty in it. And such his assurance was transferred to almost all the country. Very often a highly primitive man subconsciously apprehends a respectful attitude as an attribute of a lower rank, and he starts giving orders to this person, and then turning to humiliating submission to a person with a higher rank. There is no middle point for such people, either to order or to submit. This is the ground where hostility of low-cultured people to eggheads is based on. Demonstrating by his culture and education what looks like not high rank, such man will never agree with the role of Omega. But this perplexes the instincts and invokes a desire to show Omega his place. However, there is no precise dependency of cultural level from educational level and fulfilled work, rather it is only probable. An uneducated person may be highly cultured, which is based on low primitiveness. It is appropriate to repeat once more here that a low rank is not equal to the high culture. High culture is perceived as low rank, but the contrary is not necessary. Probably each of Russian people observed the following situation at least once. A ticket collector has boarded a public transport and is trying to check the ticket at the passenger with a higher rank who has no ticket. A ticket collector cannot do anything and he looks pitiful despite of his position. This passenger radiates so abysmal and impudent assurance of his victory that some strange and even mystical force makes a ticket collector step back. On a rational level, this ticket collector decides not to get involved with this passenger. A high-ranking person can easily stand a conflict with such tension that can cause extreme discomfort for low-ranking one. Hierarchical struggle is often confused with the aspiration for one's own significance. A person worrying about his own significance does not need to humiliate the other people. In contrary, the easiest way to raise one's own rank in hierarchy is to humiliate the people around. I think each of us observed many times and even experienced ourselves such aspiration to humiliate the others. It is easier to keep the rank than to raise it, therefore artificially created hierarchies can substitute natural and self-organized ones to some degree. This level of degree is determined by initial ranking potential of a person leading the group, and if it is insufficient then there appears a so-called informal leader and the group can be disbanded. Social position and primeval rank are quite closely interconnected but do not strictly determine one another. A person taking high post increases his rank by this. From another point, low initial ranking potential almost prevent a good career growth. Even if due to some occasional reasons a man with low ranking potential takes high post, he will not keep it for long, or in any case, will not grow any further. Depending on absence or presence of other qualities and attributes, a person with a high rank occupying a high position in society can be either a leader, also called charismatic personality, or a tyrant. Leader is usually a person with decreased primitiveness, not really aggressive with subordinates, and even capable to some self-sacrifice. Tyrant is usually coward, resulting from his high primitiveness, but aggressive. Leader is most likely a case of a person with increased but not necessarily very high rank, and exactly with a real rank but not only visual one, and for sure with low primitiveness. There are many well-known examples when a man occupying high position is henpecked by his wife. This can never happen with the tyrants. To be more specific, henpecking means that the rank of the wife is higher than the husband's one combined with the wife's high primitiveness. Tyrant somehow heading a group lives purely by his own interests, and in time of danger when the group asks him for protection he can show the cowardice and a desire to hide behind the backs of the other people, strong self-preservation instinct. Meanwhile, tyrants take the high posts not less but more often than real leaders. In hard times real leaders become apparent and tyrants fall out. That's why a famous joke of comedian M. Svanetsky, "I directed you, I will take responsibility for everything," causes laugh, since typical leader is very often tyrant who does not want to suffer for the other people. It was written by a poet about such situation. It would have been better to send him to logistics. He was brave only with us. He was awarded with execution by a tribunal for self-shooting. I will remind you that the Song of V. Vysotsky was about a head of a prison who was sent to front together with the prisoners. He was certainly a dominant, at least due to his high position. However, suddenly on the other side of a front line there appears something that absolutely does not care about his high rank, and a powerful instinct of self-preservation is triggered in our hero. At the same time, very low rank is also contraindicated for a leader, as the party starts playing the king's role, or control and management over the group gets completely lost. Obvious case is Russian Tsar Nicholas II. Even his undoubtedly high level of culture did not help him. Here is one of disadvantages of a monarchical state: there is a certain probability that it may be headed by a person with unacceptably low rank. The consequences of this are well known from the history. In the other cases it is necessary to fight for a high position what sifts out very low-ranking people. A famous book after Niccolò Machiavelli presents a set of recommendations, like that: a sovereign should never justify for his action, for keeping a visual rank of a leader on a reasonably high level. The main point in dispute is to jump to personal attacks at the right moment. M. Svanetsky. Getting to personality, a participant changes the focus from the subject of the dispute to uncovering ranking potentials. And if opponent's ranking potential happen to be lower, then he instinctively subjects to higher rank, thus admitting his defeat in dispute, though he might be right in essence of this matter. there is a widespread opinion among the vulgar public that it is necessary to beat a wife from time to time. By this, a husband beating his wife demonstrates a kind of high rank, visual, of course. And this can even attract a low cultural woman, especially with high primitiveness. Masochism probably grows on this ground. Such woman rushes to defend her man as soon as the first hair falls down from his head, despite asking to punish him only a moment before. Highly cultural and especially low primitive woman will not act this way. An actual rank of this man can be quite low. Even his buddies may have no respect for him. However, it is appropriate to mention that the instinct cannot analyze anything, it just reacts on some key attributes, in this case, irreverent attitude to a woman. If he beats, he does not appreciate. He has many women. Alpha has many women. Here is the similar Russian picture: a drunk man in a public transportation is brawling and swearing. Women start yelling, "Are there any real men? Make him quiet." Finally, a couple strong men or policemen get the unruly passenger down, as suddenly the very same women begin protecting him. Paradox? No. Antisocial behavior is one of the strongest attribute of high rank, and physical power demonstrated by the real men in enforcing the order has relatively loose correlation with high rank. Moreover, defending someone but themselves, these men demonstrated a certain self-sacrifice that is an attribute of low rank. If they were able to nail the villain down only by glaring, that would have been totally different thing. By the way, observing such gratitude, real men will not get involved in fight next time. Women suddenly start feeling sorry for this cad. While he was dangerous, the positive feelings were overcast by fear. But as soon as the danger disappeared, highly primitive minds started justifying the answer, since it was necessary to justify positive feeling toward obviously negative personality, and found that the most suitable word for this situation was pity. Somehow these women are not pitiful for other people which were threatened by this cad.